Well, welcome back. Wow, that's loud. I know that you guys are probably a bit restless having now had lots of lunch, but we appreciate you coming back and not bailing out after lunch. So are you guys enjoying Skills so far? Yeah. How many of you guys were here on Thursday? Nice. How many of you guys were here Friday? All right. And how many of you, this is your first scale? Damn. That's awesome. And you guys are all enjoying? And you're going to be back next year? So our next talk is something that I'm actually pretty excited about. Words, I have them. Kara's going to be talking about growing user groups, and I think I was chatting with her before the talk because I used to run a user group, and it's one of those things that people don't talk about very much, and then they go, yeah, I'm going to run a user group, and then they disappear. So I think it's really cool that someone's going to be talking about this. So without further ado, Kara Sowles.
Hey. So my computer's on the wrong time zone, and this talk goes from 1:30 to 2:30, so halfway through when I panic and I think it's like 3 o'clock or something, just heads up, yell at me and be like, it's actually not that time right now. I'm going to be talking about growing your technology user group. A little bit of background on me. I'm a community manager at Puppet Labs. We make configuration management software. This talk is not about configuration management or software, so I'm sorry. You can check out a lot of the stuff about Puppet online, and we're going to go on a little journey on this talk here. And so if you like adventures and you like journeys, there's actually a pretty cool learning VM for Puppet where you can go on a quest figuring out how to learn Puppet. So if you are here for adventures and you're disappointed there's no Puppet adventures, I would recommend checking that out. The reason that I'm talking about this is at Puppet, we have a really large community of users. We have, for those not familiar, we have open source products as well as an enterprise one. And when I started as a community manager, we had maybe 5 user groups out there, sort of run by community members. And I worked on the program for a while, and we have, I think, over 50 now. And so a lot of this is based on spending a lot of time talking to folks in the community and saying, hey, what problems are you encountering? What are your obstacles? How can we get around them? Because I can't be there in person. I didn't have a large budget for the program, but I want to be able to help people set up those groups and be successful with those groups. So that's a lot of what this is sort of based around. And then talking with other folks as well who are running other kinds of user groups and getting their advice. But I know that my experience is still really limited, so I look forward to hearing from you folks. I look forward to having a conversation at the end where you say, actually, that hasn't been my experience. Here's what my experience has been, and hearing from all of you. So often it goes like this. I made a user group. I'm really pumped. It's great. It's pretty fun. We had a great first meeting. All of my friends came. We had a really good time. And then you get to your second meeting, and there's just kind of an elephant graveyard there. There's just kind of nothing going on. My cousin was in town, and I couldn't meet. I couldn't find a presenter except that one friend that presented last time, and I don't want to pay for pizza. I actually never want to eat pizza again. If I eat pizza again, I'll probably die. So it just didn't happen again. And this is what we're trying to avoid here, because this is something we see so often. I sometimes worry I see more ghost towns than I see communities. And user groups are a part of this, right? Like, while they're sort of characterized by being that move from an online community to like an actual sort of in-person community around technology, they're still usually organized online. You still see the rubble where they used to be. So we're going to take a journey. We're going to take a little trip here through many of the, and I don't want to scare any of you. Running a user group is wonderful. User groups are so positive and exciting, and they're really a great thing. But there's a lot of dangers along the way. There's a lot of obstacles. And so we're going to kind of walk through this. We're going to walk through the no members mountains. We're going to see if we can get through the venue-less valley and the speakerless swamps, which are actually one of the ones I fear the most. I fear drowning in there. The foodless flats, where we may starve to death. The rains of rejection. And maybe by the end of the talk we'll make it up there to that perfect user group in the sky. If it's real, I don't know. Some say it's a myth. But I'm excited for it. But we're gonna start off in the hall of user group creation, which is a comfy spot. It's a nice spot. It's got a roof on it. Because I know there's some folks in here who haven't quite started a user group yet or are just starting one. So we're gonna go over that sort of very briefly before we move forward. Hall of user group creation. Let's do this. So we know the basics. You're looking for a date. You're looking to have a venue speaker. We'll cover all this stuff. You know kind of what you're looking for in order to actually have a meeting. But what I like to start off with is reconnaissance. When do other groups meet? Are you picking a time that another group meets like the day after? Maybe people don't want to go to 2 user groups in a row. Some people do, but I don't, personally. I want to watch TV 50% of those evenings. So you don't want to compete there. Is there already a group about it? I'm surprised how often people don't Google that. I know all of you would Google it. I trust you all, but it happens a lot. And then see what works well for other groups. There's no fix-all for anything, and that's kind of obvious. If there was like a one-piece solution for everything, my life would be amazing. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, one thing you can do is you can co-present.
Yes, we will definitely cover that. That's a very good point. If you look like locally, like groups will meet very different times. Like some areas, I don't know what the case is with LA, but like some areas people have to drive so far that they have to meet early or evening. How is it for this area? Do you meet like 6 p.m., 7 p.m.?
It's 7, yeah, usually 7.
7 because of the traffic?
Oh, it's still brutal.
Ouch. So, and then a lot of areas, if you meet at 7, everyone's at home, they've put their kids to bed, and they're falling asleep in front of the TV already, so you're out. So kind of do reconnaissance on other groups and see what's been successful for them. Talk to them. See what's up. Choosing an online home for your group, again, there's no kind of solution here. This talk is just us throwing out ideas, and you get to do the audience participation part where you sort through what actually makes sense for you and throw the rest out. Congratulations. That's a large part of life. But for us, like in Portland, we made a Google group, and so we'll talk on the Google group. We'll plan stuff. Most people don't want to hear all of that planning. And then we'll post it on like a meetup page, so anyone can just see it, they can go to it, they're done, they don't have to subscribe if they don't want. So we choose to give people options, but you can split it out. Some like groups have very different homes there. Think about the purpose of that. Are you trying to make it very clear for people to see, or are you trying to let them kind of engage with it? And then setting expectations is a huge part, I think, of this whole talk, of this whole topic. But just for starting, pick a cadence. Pick like a first Thursday or like a third Thursday, yeah.
And if you're in LA, please don't pick the first Thursday because my UAC meetup is there.
Cool, I take back first Thursday. First Thursday's off the table. Okay, that's off the table. That's off the table. But this really helps, if you start that from the beginning and start that right, it helps people stay in that cadence. Make sure you have a purpose. Why are you starting this? I forget this part, right? Think about yourself. What do you want? And then also separately think about what do you want other people to get out of it. Do you have a mission? Work with the people who come to that first meeting maybe and write up that mission. Have a mission statement, because this can help define everything else you do with the group. It'll ground you. It'll center you in that space. So have a purpose. And so now our journey begins. And as I said, for each of these obstacles, we're going to go through some options, some ways that you might move through it. Different answers are right for different groups. There's no cure-all. There's no, like, one weird trick that we've all been looking for. It's probably not real. So the no members mountains, they're rough. I don't know about LA. For us in Portland, for example, we have a local site called Caligator. And with Caligator, people in the tech community can just all post what their events are. And a lot of cities have something like this, but it's different for each area. And finding those community like tech hubs where people look for events, I think is really important. Another place is actually local conferences. There's a lot of conferences that are even built on user groups coming together, that are built on the community from user groups coming together. You see a lot of user group presence here, sort of at scale. So this is an example where I was at a conference, maybe Linux Fest Northwest, and the Greater Seattle Linux Users Group actually had a table there, and they were talking to people about their group, and you see that around here. And I actually really like this. If you're going to go to a place, think about communicating it. And the best part here, look at this. This is great. They actually say the cadence on their card. Second Saturday of the month, they say their website, they say their IRC, and their mailing list. So you can pick. You can be like, I just want to chat with them on IRC. They've got everything you need right there, which is fantastic. I love it. And then, as you mentioned, joint meetings, I think, are a really good way to get members. Find other groups that do something similar, and do a co-meeting that equally applies to both audiences. It grows both groups. It's great for cross-pollination. It's great because speakers are such a hard thing to find, and so you're actually sharing resources. You're supporting other parts of the community. I think this is a really good collaborative thing for groups to do to get more members, and then they can still move back into their own spaces where they might have a specialized topic the other group's just not that into. So we're in the no members mountains. I feel kind of good. We have some members, right? This is good. We're getting started. We've got some friends at last. We're going to go toward the Venulus Valley, which is actually filled with snakes. That's real. That's a big issue for me. As you start to look for a venue, make a list of aspects of your group. Don't just be like, hey, can you host me? Because people are going to ask. They want to know about your group to see if it's a good fit. Do the work beforehand and bring that to whoever you want to host. Talk about the group's purpose. Write down like how many members you usually get. What's your date and time? What are your AV requirements? Do you have any other needs for the group? And have all that information ready when you ask for a venue, because you will save that person like 3 emails and they are way more likely to say yes. I get a lot of emails where people, or I used to when I managed the space at my company on the other side, people would be like, hey, can I like have a business meeting for my startup? And you're like, okay, and like 3 emails later, it's like a legalized weed group or something. And like, it's just not what you expect. Like, that's not bad, it's just not what you expected. You know, when you were like, hey, can we host this like one startup meeting? And it's like 3 people talking about like legalizing weed. Like, that's cool, but like, we can only host so many things, so it saves me some time. And think about sort of the perks of people hosting your meetup, because not everyone gets the community aspect of it, and that's okay. You can tell them about that, or you can tell them about aspects that they might be better attuned with. You don't need to offer them stuff like, hey, we can announce any open jobs if it doesn't fit with your group's purpose that you already have and your mission. But if it's fine in there, then offer that. Say, hey, well, like, we list you as a sponsor, you know, talk to the library about how you're going to bring in more people, stuff like that. It helps, even if the person you're talking to gets it, the person they have to convince might not. You're giving them ammunition. It's a gift. So most people start off, they ask your own company. You're like, okay, maybe my company will do it. Your company says no. You ask your friend's company. Awesome, my friend works at a company. Maybe they'll say yes. But you don't have any friends, or the friend's company says no. They don't like you. So when you hear that no, you can ask and say, do you have any recommendations for other spots in town? A lot of people, when they turn folks away because they can't host any more groups, actually know other companies that host groups, and that's a really good connection. I do this a lot and have good success for this sort of in town. It's still a no. You're out of luck. Are there local companies that cater to your demographic? It's a scuba diving group. Is there a scuba dive gear company in town? Like, look it up. See if there's something that really fits, because they're going to be a lot more likely, like, I'll move heaven and earth to host a DevOps meetup at Puppet Labs, which I would not do for our aforementioned friend or someone like that. Ask the people in your user group. I know this is obvious, but sometimes you just ask your friends in the user group, and actually there's more people in it. We're going through the options. And then look at your local university or your local library. There are really interesting benefits to hosting a user group at a university or a library. They're very different spaces. There's a lot of libraries I know that are trying to bring more people in, and they see user groups, especially technology user groups, as an opportunity to get in touch with that crowd, to bring sort of more people into their space. Not all libraries. Some libraries don't like you. They don't want you there. They want you to be quiet. But sort of think about that. And then as you think about university, I've talked with user groups that, for example, will actually help with curriculum on stuff that they're related to, you know, stuff like that. But then they might, for example, not be able to have alcohol at the group because they're at a university. So there's a lot of really interesting aspects to different spaces that are worth exploring. You're still stuck. No one will host you. The library hangs up your calls. That's sad. So check where other user groups are hosted. Often there's a group that's hosting a bunch of groups. Actually go through and check and cold call them, because they're clearly interested. They still said no. No one will host you. What do you need to be flexible on to get a venue? Is it the meeting time? Do you want to meet at 3 p.m. and everyone actually has work to do at 3 p.m. and they don't want you in their building? Are you, like, think about in terms of like timing or activity, like what it is that you might need to be flexible on to get a venue, and be willing to be flexible on that. Be aware of why you're not able to find a space. Still no hosts. You're crying a lot. It's a hard week. Think about temporary locations, restaurants, coffee shops, bars. You can host like a meeting. You don't have to worry about venue yet, and then you can talk to people about getting a venue. Also be aware of potential drawbacks. Be aware that like if you host it in a bar, that's awesome. You may get a bunch of people, but then some people who don't want to go in a bar, maybe they are too young to go in a bar, or they don't want to drink or whatever. They may not show up. You may not hear from them. So think about being clear that you're trying to move toward a venue, or think about just being like, this is what we do. We drink and code, and that's our thing. So this goes back to sort of that mission. And then finally, be a good guest. Actually leave the space clean. Turn the projector off. Oh my gosh, seriously. Like, I used to be in charge of the space, and every morning the AV people would be like, do you know the projector was on this morning? And I don't know how many bulbs that burnt through, but I was always on the bad list because my groups would not turn that off. So check back in every month. Actually, like, thank them, clean everything up. This is crucial, and when you are so tired at the end of a meetup, it is the easiest thing to forget because you want to ride home from your friend, and you don't want to pick up, like, 20 cups. If you need to bring your own paper cups and throw them out so that you don't have to wash, like, 50 dishes, do it. That's worth the money. It's worth your time if you need to do that. Okay, I feel pretty good. I feel like we got a venue. There's some shelter happening. We worked through this some. So let's move forward to the speakerless swamps. And this is the part I dread the most. This is where I wake up in the middle of the night sweating, imagining the speakerless swamps, because it's really tough. Speakers are something that you feel like should be easy to get from the outside, and then from the inside, you feel like that's not happening. Is it you? Is it them? You don't know what's going on. So this is pretty stressful. So here's one thing that I really like to do, and this has been a huge help for me, is at the end of the meeting, everyone's still there, they're about to get up and go, and I'm like, don't go anywhere, don't leave. Okay. What topics do you want to hear about next month? We get a couple hands up, you write it on the board. Got a couple topics. Does anyone have experience with topic number 1? Does anyone actually know about that? And if someone's like, oh, you really couldn't have experience, you're like, oh, okay, cool, well, you can talk next month. So it's a bait and switch. You're tricking them. That's a lot of getting speakers is luring them into admitting that they know about something, and then bolstering their confidence. You can also take that list of topics you made. You can post it on sort of the online forum that you have, and ask again, because there may be people who weren't there who want to speak. Another thing I do a lot is I'll say, does anyone want to speak? And everybody says no. And we go to or they say nothing, actually. They don't even say no. They actually stare in very different directions from where my face is, trying to pretend that I'm not there in, like, terror. So then we go to the social part at the end, and I'll go up to people, I'll say, hey, what are you doing? Well, Puppet. I'm like, what are you doing in Puppet? And they're like, well, I'm doing this and that. And then, like, 25 minutes later, they've told me everything. I'm like, that was a talk. Yeah, like, seriously, don't just tell me that for 25 minutes. Please tell everybody. And so engaging with people on what they're up to, and then convincing them that other people want to hear about it is huge. Every time you want speakers, you're fighting their own imposter syndrome. You're fighting their fear of other people. You're trying to help support them and bring them up to that space. And so along with that, cultivate people who don't give talks yet. Do you maybe have, like, be like, hey, we're just going to have a bunch of 10-minute talks. It's not scary. Just come up and tell us really briefly what we're doing to get people used to being up there. As you grow speakers in your group, you help the whole community, you help your group, and you help those people in that space. So what you can do to be supportive is crucial. Don't just be like, oh, there's that one guy who talks at all the meetups. Let's just get that guy every month. Like, no, we've heard that guy like 10 times.
Don't be that guy.
Well, be that guy, because that's good. You need speakers, right? Thumbs up to that person. So at if you have a company that's related, this isn't as often, but like for me, I actually work at a company that's related to one of the user groups that I run. And so I'll look for managers that are actually supportive of their employees speaking and want them to speak, because those managers have a huge part in encouraging folks. And this doesn't apply in a lot of situations, but I found this actually really helpful in terms of growing people, because they'll listen to their manager more than they listen to me. I don't know why. It's a thing that happens. And then sometimes I'll go to companies and say, will you send someone to talk on this particular topic? That's another thing that I'll try. There's still no speakers. That's okay. That happens. Don't beat yourself up about it. Have a discussion session. Have a hack night. Be like, let's just work on stuff together. Make it really clear that that's what's happening. Set those expectations, because when people think about if they want to step outside the door, if they want to leave the warm recess of their home where the television's on and their dog is adorable and come to your user group specifically, they want a topic they're really excited about. Maybe they know they love the group and they're excited to see everyone there because they're all very nice people. Or they want to know like a specific activity that they're going to be doing. So as you set those expectations, tell people like, beginners welcome. We're going to hack on stuff and we'll all support each other. Like, be very clear if you're holding a freeform session, who's invited, what you're going to be doing, and why people want to come. Define the value, because people know that they actually want to come. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do here. Like, this could go forever. Yeah.
We do 5-minute demos, 5-minute demo night, and anyone can get up and just kind of show what they're working on, and that's a great way to gauge interest and see what people are interested in. Be like, hey, can you turn that 5-minute talk into a 30-minute talk?
I love that. So in case the recording can't hear that, 5-minute demos was a suggestion where just everyone kind of gets up, they do a 5-minute demo on something, and then you can be like, hey, now you can talk about that at a larger meetup. I love that idea. There's interesting stuff you can do like fishbowl, where some people sit in the center and then you swap in and out. There's a lot of really cool formats. That could be like a whole talk in and of itself. We could go forever. Yeah?
You can also do Linux 101. Some people may be new.
That's a very good point. The suggestion was Linux 101. Having an introductory session once in a while I think is really crucial in terms of bringing new folks in. I should have had a slide in here about specifically bringing new folks in, and that is definitely missing, and I apologize, so thank you for bringing that up. I'll put that under the no members mountains, because alternating and making sure you have introductory content is, I think, really crucial in terms of building membership. Very good point. So, speakerless swamps, maybe not so scary. We have some speakers now. That's good. We're growing our own. Homegrown. Good work. Let's move forward to the foodless flats. So, how do you get food? Food costs money. I don't know if you noticed that, but that's the thing about food that I struggle with every day. So, when we're talking about food, a lot of what we're talking about is actually finding sponsors. I'm not actually going to buy like 30 people pizza every month from my own heart. I would maybe if I had more money, but I don't. So the first impulse is usually to go to the company that's hosting you and say, hey, can you buy us some food? And this actually works more often than I expect, where they're like, yeah, we'll buy you food. That's cool. You can raid our fridge of stuff, or sweet startup snacks, and have like goldfish for an hour or something. So that's,
Or they may have a budget, too.
they may have a budget. They may be very specific. You have this much money. But that doesn't always work. You go to your own company, and you argue the case. You say, like, hey, this is kind of a thing with a thing. And this is, again, where you want to pull in your mission and say, are you, like, does this connect with your company? Are you getting, are you trying to recruit people in that space, and you have a little announcement as, like, a food sponsor at the beginning where you're like, hey, just talk to me if you want to talk about it. Is it related to what your company's doing? This is where that kind of ties back in thematically. Often it's just, like, a random person at the meetup group. She's just like, yeah, my company will just pay for it. My company's just really nice, and they'll sponsor it. And that's awesome, too. You get that a lot. But, yeah, sorry, I went forward too fast there. But I actually would be interested in hearing more techniques to kind of getting sponsorship at the end, because I feel like those are the scenarios that I tend to see. It doesn't feel, it feels kind of random to me. Who pops up and says, yeah, my company has money right now and they're willing to sponsor. So if you folks have tips for that at the end, please, let's do that. Another thing we'll do is flag. Like, if you are talking about something that is actually related to a company that might send you things, you can email them and just say, hey, Puppet, I have a Puppet user group, you want to send me some stickers or something? Yeah. But other groups do it too. O'Reilly, for example, they will just send you books. That's cool. They're great about that. All the time.
No more that stopped the program this year.
What? No, they haven't.
Yeah, talk to them downstairs in the vendor.
Cool. So we'll see how that conversation goes. Yeah, what's up?
Bill from No Such Press is generally pretty good about that.
Awesome. Sounds like No Starch Press also will send books sometimes to user groups, yeah?
Vendors lie. Just because they said no doesn't mean if you call them again and again and again, you won't eventually get a yes.
Well,
You talk to the wrong person, and, there are people that will say yes to whatever you want.
I totally get that. People email me over and over again thinking I'm going to change my answer. It's interesting how it doesn't change, but but some people are not like that. Yeah. They try to work around me too. It's funny. It's still in the same way.
When Bob, when are you gonna be out? I'm not calling when you're out.
Oh, they try. Yeah, they try. My reach goes far. It's bad. So, yeah, swag. Think about it. So one thing I want to talk about as we talk about sponsorship is actually your company as a support structure. Now, this is probably the most specialized thing in this deck, which I've tried to make pretty general. I personally happen to work at Puppet Labs, and I work with Puppet user groups. So those are very clearly related. And in most cases, people don't work at a company that might support a user group. But I still want to touch on this really briefly for folks who do, because I think this is a really valuable thing to think about in that context of sponsorship, is thinking like other departments at your company. You can leverage like so many of the departments at your company to support your group by thinking about what their goals are and how they might actually be really interested in user groups. A lot of people don't understand the value of community, and they don't understand user groups, user group culture, or the value of user groups. And that's okay. They're just waiting for you to come along and help them understand it from their perspective. And so, like, when I talk to, like, sales folks about user groups, like, they suddenly start to get there, like, oh, I do actually want to, like, pay for pizza for this group. Like, this is something I actually care about. Or the education team is like, oh, we do actually really want to, like, send learning resources, or, like, do a tutorial for folks, stuff like that. The engineering team is really excited to actually present on what they're doing because they can get feedback then and there from folks who are interested in it. So think about approaching folks all throughout your company. If this is something that applies to you, don't just think about the one department that you're really used to working with. Yeah.
You don't have HR on there.
I don't have HR in there, but there's a lot of great
No,
stuff.
I mean, that's, even for tech stuff, that's like the biggest.
I think you're totally right. Yeah, you're definitely right that, like, putting HR on there would be really good. You see a lot of hiring teams and stuff out of that.
The people that come to this meetup, some of the technology we talk about are used here at work,
Mm-hmm.
and the kind of people that show up here are the kind of people that we want to bring on board.
Very good point. And they often will have sponsorship budgets that don't come out of something like marketing that they will support, which is, I think, what you were trying to get at in terms of talking to different people at a company who might have different budgetary sort of areas. Food? Yeah, we have some food. Okay. As we're still here, now that we've actually obtained our food, I'm really tired of pizza. Like, pizza's really good. It's so good, and I love it, and I don't love it 5 nights a week and then also on the weekends as leftover pizza. It's tough. There's no great answer. In terms of food, there's some good guidelines, like, is it really messy, like you'd be embarrassed to eat it in front of others? Maybe you don't want to clean that mess up afterwards. There's stuff like that. We work really hard to make sure that we have gluten-free and vegan and vegetarian options all available, and that's the nice thing about pizza is you can order, like, a couple different pizzas and you kind of cover all of that. But the proliferation of pizza is maybe troubling, but understandable sometimes from a price standpoint. So a big thing for us is we'll order, we love, like, Lebanese food, for example, stuff that defaults to being delicious and often vegetarian is really good. So sort of get creative. I think a lot of that's local, like what's nearby that's good, that's not too expensive, that people actually like, that can have a variety of dietary excited people. And the other thing with food that I did not put a slide in here for is that alcohol is an awesome thing that many user groups have, which is great. A lot of user groups really like to also use that as an advertisement for the group. I think it's really important to consider having non-alcoholic options alongside that. Not everybody drinks alcohol. So if you want to bring a bunch of people into your group, it's worth saying, hey, drinks will be sponsored, but you can say, like, we will have, like, beer and X. Like, X is a delicious drink substitute. It's not actually a drink. That's not a name of drink. But think about having something other than just, like, Coke. I'm really tired of going to meetups and everyone has, like, really, like, 5 fancy beers, and I'm like, hey, what's for me, guys? And they're like, a Coke. Like, I don't want a Coke right now. If I could have drunk Coke all day long, you know? So think about, like, local sodas, like, cool craft brewed sodas are awesome. People actually get really excited about it. Giving people alternatives also means they can come to your meetup and then maybe they could drive home from work. That's great. Stuff like that. There's a lot of benefit to having non-alcoholic drinks there. So think about both promoting that you have that and also making sure you provide that. And the third aspect there is water. I've started putting pitchers of water with cups next to them on the main table at my meetup, and it's amazing how much the people who come hydrate. I live in Portland, so a lot of people will bike in, and it can be intimidating when you're being hosted in an office to try to, like, find the water tap, and you're like, can I use these glasses? Is this okay? You're not really sure. Just get past that for people. Just put it right there for them so they can stay hydrated. Love water. We're so close. We've hit the rains of rejection, also known as the storm of sad. We did a lot of brainstorming, no pun intended, on this morning. Let me tell you, it is hard to rhyme things with storms. This is where all the thinking you've been doing about your group and setting those expectations kind of comes together. You want your group to be a welcoming place. You don't want it to feel, like the rains of rejection. You want people to come in and enjoy the space and be excited to be there. And there's a lot that you can do to kind of make sure that that's a pleasant place. Setting expectations is a huge part of making your group inviting. People want to know what's going to happen. Anatomy of a meeting, like, you could post, hey, we're going to have this talk, and the talk will be at 6 p.m. But instead, you could post something like, do I have a slide for this? I don't. You could post something like, arrive at, 5:30, food will arrive at 6, talk starts at 6:30, talk runs for this long, then we're going to have discussion for a half hour, then we're going to talk, and then folks will go home. It feels way better to know what's going to happen. Like, that inertia of trying to get outside your door is so tough when you don't know what to expect. And that's what you're battling. When you want people to come to your event, you're fighting their fear of the unknown. Don't make it the unknown. Tell them what's going to happen. So having a really robust agenda, even if you only have one thing on the agenda, you can still have 4 time numbers that tell you what's up. I think that's a huge thing. Make a clear familiarity level. Tell people, is it for beginners? If it's for beginners, make it so clear. Plaster it everywhere. You're fighting their imposter syndrome to help them come and learn. So make it clear, if people need to bring a computer, right, you need to bring a computer. If you think people think they're going to need to, but they don't, tell them they don't need to. Sometimes you're so familiar with the event that you can't see the doubts and uncertainties that other people have where they're not certain what space they're walking into, which is why it's worth being really explicit about this. Or is it an intermediate level talk? Be clear. Say, hey, it's an intermediate level talk. Beginners are welcome to come. However, the content will all be intermediate. We will have a beginner meeting in several months. If you have questions, you can ask them then, but that's what this is going to be. There's nothing wrong with that. Accessibility is really important. Is it actually easy to find the venue? Do you have to go a back door and down the freight elevator? And it just, it gets weird. So actually list that stuff out. List if there's parking. People want to know if they're going to have to walk from their car. List if there's bike parking. List if there's bus access. If it's wheelchair accessible, the venue, then say that.
And how much parking? Yeah,
is there enough parking? Is it $30 a minute? Things like that. Make sure your venue is wheelchair accessible and list that so people don't feel like it's going to be a surprise when they get there, because I don't want to go to a meeting where I feel like it's going to be potentially unpleasant surprises. And then one thing that I've started doing is I'll list at the bottom, I'll say, hey, if you have any other requests around accessibility, you can email kara@puppetlabs.com. And that kind of covers it. I know that if someone has something that they want to know about or that they're curious if we can provide, that they know who to reach out to, that they know that I want to hear from them. And then I don't have to cover every last thing that we can or can't have. Folks can kind of reach out because it's a meetup. If it were an event, I would list a lot more. So this is something that I've been kind of trying out. You need to have a code of conduct for your user group. I know that this is not as common as it is often for events, but this is something that comes up a lot. When I give this talk, First 2 times I gave it, I was like a little nervous on the slide. I was like, maybe you should have a code of conduct. And both times, people in the audience were like, oh, we needed a code of conduct way sooner. We were like way too late to this party. And I want everyone in the audience to know that you should have one right now. Like, every time I've given this talk, the response for people having user groups has been like, get a code of conduct, have it now, have it in place, be ready. You don't feel like you need it now, that's the time to put it in place. That's crucial. And you can just post a link to it. Like, for each meetup, like little like meeting invite, I just put at the bottom. I'm like, hey, you know, we have a code of conduct. Everyone's expected to follow it, and there's a little link, and it goes to our code of conduct, which is great. If you want to go the extra mile at the beginning of the meetup, you can actually reference the code of conduct so people know it exists who just showed up, and also they never read your meeting invites ever. That's a thing that happens. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to say here.
Do you have any boilerplate code of conduct reference?
Yes, that is in 2 slides. We're so close. But thank you for asking that. So yeah, we don't really intend to be exclusionary with our user groups and with our meetups. Like, we want to be welcoming, we really want to be inclusionary, but we need to actually put effort and work into making them positive spaces for all sorts of people to attend. It's not something that just sort of magically happens. And so I think it's really important to think about having a code of conduct and think about how you're bringing people into your space from a more proactive angle. So here, great question. So the Geek Feminism Wiki, you can see here, you don't need to write entirely your own. I mean, you need to like think about it and absorb it and enforce it and things like that, so it's not just like slap it on, done. But you can go to the Geek Feminism Wiki, you can find this sample conference anti-harassment policy. You can find a lot of writings that folks have done on how to handle these things. There's a lot of resources out there for you. And this is a huge part of setting expectations for the group, as we've been sort of talking about all along. So, did that go forward? That didn't go forward. Now it went forward. So, the reins of rejection have cleared. Yeah. It's looking good, right? We've had a really long journey. We've made it a long ways. I hope you guys feel good about how far we've come. Are we there yet? Are we all the way there? There's one last obstacle. We got the final boss up there. Do you know what that obstacle is?
You got it. Now you got to worry about next month's meetup.
Yeah. It's you. I'm sorry. You're the final obstacle. You are one of the biggest obstacles to your group. And this isn't personal. I'm not like looking at someone in the crowd and be like, it's you. It's me. I am the biggest obstacle to my groups. I don't have enough time. I just don't. Or maybe I don't have the dedication. What's wrong with me? Why haven't I done it yet? What? Running groups myself, I have broken everything, every piece of suggestion that I've ever given someone. I've messed up and not done it. It's okay that user groups are really hard. It's okay that you don't have time to run your group regularly. It's okay that these are really tough things. My advice here is get co-organizers. Don't do this alone. Get help. Recruit other people in the group to do aspects of it. You are really busy, and it's awesome how many people find time to run these groups and do a great job, but if that suddenly isn't you, if you suddenly are really busy, that's okay. You need to take care of yourself. Bring other people on. If you go on vacation, you want to know that someone else is there. You go on a work trip, you want to know someone else is there who's going to help run the group. And as you bring other people on to help with things, be incredibly clear about what people are doing. Even if it's just on a meeting by meeting, be like, so you're going to figure out a speaker and you're going to do this thing. Like, it's not like a magical, like, slap a Band-Aid on. You're like, oh, there's a co-organizer. They'll just magically know what I didn't do this month. Done. Sadly, it does not work that way. But you need to take care of yourself, just for yourself, and you also need to take care of your group in terms of having other people involved. You won't always run that group, chances are. Document what's working. Document what kind of meetings you've had, what topics have worked. Because when you suddenly need to like move to Boston or something, you want to have that you can pass to someone so they don't have to make all of the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. Don't repeat those. Write it down. Help sort of the future. And I'm not trying to be hard on the whole you thing here. This is me. This is me.
It's a good point, though.
Thanks.
The other one is, sometimes you may need to step away, too.
Yep.
At a certain point where you just, look, somebody else has got to do this, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. And there's no slide for this because it's a horrible thing to say near the end of your talk. So I said I wouldn't say this. But sometimes there just aren't enough people to support your group. That happens. We've all seen it happen. It's okay. That's where you look at stuff like, does it make sense to absorb into another group? Does it make sense to make a more general group, a more broad group, because you can't support a specialized topic? And that's okay. Those things happen. It's not just you. And those are the hard calls that you have to make as an organizer and say, is it because I don't have enough to give the group right now, or is it because this area just doesn't have enough to come in and talk about this topic? I talked to someone this morning who was saying that, it was Josh Simmons from O'Reilly was saying that his group's success has actually paved the way for other more specialized groups, because people have come into his more generalized group, met each other, formed those connections, and it's made them ready to form other groups. And like that kind of thing is really positive as well. So sometimes a successful group can breathe new life into other things. And sometimes the circle of life just... Anyway.
Yep.
So, anyway, happy note. We made it! This is great, look! We're feeling good. We've done our journey, and we're up here in the sky, in the clouds, in the perfect user group. I don't know if that place is real. I don't know if I've given you a map that leads to the Holy Grail, to something that you may never find, that you dream of finding. For everyone has to sort of discover that for themselves, and we traverse this path over and over and over again, and we get better at it every time, I like to think. But I always look up there where I'm headed, and I tell myself that someday I'll get there. So what I want to do now is, we have 15 minutes. I want to hear some of your advice. I want to hear some of what's worked for you folks and what hasn't worked, and kind of hash through that, because groups are so different, areas are so different, topics are so different. It's really hard to boil it down. Like, there's no cure-all. As you saw, we just kind of flip through ideas because it's helpful to brainstorm with other people, but there's no salve that kind of heals those wounds. Yeah.
So, you were talking about venues. In Arizona, venues weren't as much of a problem, although sometimes they were. We found that other places you might want to look, sometimes there's like co-working facilities.
Ooh, co-working
Sometimes
facilities.
they have, conference rooms and so on you can borrow in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Community centers, although you can get weird sort of rules, and you can get to first come, first serve. Everybody has to sign up at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, and the first person gets there to reserve their space. Churches sometimes, or similar. And surprisingly enough, small, or some of these large for-profit colleges like DeVry and such not, sometimes you can use space there.
Excellent. That's really helpful. So just in case the recording can't hear, co-working spaces, churches, what else did you say?
Community centers.
Community centers.
And private colleges like DeVry and things like that.
Cool. And sometimes private colleges or all other places to check out. That's really helpful. Yes, Crowton.
So on location, maker spaces are also a good one.
Ooh.
And then on food, Sowles and Subway can offer good alternatives to pizza. Also, your local taqueria can often bring in a taco buffet.
Ooh.
Or Thai or Indian would be good.
Nice. So for the recording, sort of for food, think about a taco buffet. I will come to your meetup. I'll be there. Just tell me. I'll fly there. And what was the venue suggestion again? Maker spaces. Oh, that's really good. Yeah.
So you have a lot on like the content of the communication. But if you're communicating enough, you're going to feel like you're way over.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I'm going to send something to my community, it's like, how many different ways can I tell them in case they missed the first one? Is it in the IRC topic? Did it get posted to the blog? Did I post in the forums? Did people that didn't read the blog? Did I send email? Did I put it on social media? Make sure that you have all that content. Maybe it's like a centralized place. Like maybe the blog article has all the information, everything else links back there. But if you're communicating enough, you're probably going to feel like you're way over communicating.
That's a really good point. Sort of balancing communicating all the information with over-communicating and thinking about if you have a central source that you point back to with that information. Yeah.
But also, on that topic, maybe there are more people, for example, that read the mailing list as opposed to Google Plus, for example, in our case.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a volunteer that offered to take a template of our announcements and post it in all of our official channels of communication. And that has been very helpful so far. Now, in the topic of presentations, we dedicate a full meeting to pick up presentations in advance. So we always have backup presentations, and also we run a survey like 2 weeks before to find what the audience wants, what chooses as a presentation for the next meeting from the list of already offered presentations, and not to be burdened or looking for, what's going to be that next presenter for this month, 2 weeks around the corner. And, yeah.
That's fantastic. So for anyone who couldn't hear, having dedicating a meeting, like a full meeting to kind of finding presentations, and then having a survey where people vote on what they kind of want to hear about from that list of presentations they already know folks have offered to give, so they have a whole backlog and everything. Very cool.
If you're on you run your meeting on Meetup, you might want to think about controlling the messaging because it gets set up and automatic. Somebody puts a message, it goes to the whole group, things along those lines, and you'll get all kinds of recruiters or salespeople hitting your members directly. It's probably a good idea to try to control that and limit that and filter it through the organizers first, and then make a decision whether it needs to go out or not.
That's a great point. In your Meetup settings, you can control if people can reach out to the whole group, members can reach out to the whole group, or if you have to approve it first. And if people can just contact the whole group, sometimes you get recruiters spamming people, you get stuff like that. Another setting in there is, there's a setting on Meetup is folks can suggest a meeting, and if enough people say they're going to go, it just happens. If you don't want that on, don't turn that on. Because people, like for me, people are like, let's do a puppet meeting where we talk about actual puppets, because they think it's an actual puppet group, and then I have to go in and delete it. That happens to me a lot through that. And I think along with that is making your group's purpose really clear as well, and making your group's rules really clear. So you can say, hey, this is our purpose, this is what we do, so hopefully no one thinks you're about actual puppets. And you can also say, hey, like, messages to the list can be about these kinds of things, but not job postings, and setting those expectations.
And the code of conduct, like you mentioned, too, gets patrolled up.
Yeah.
I was actually going to say code of conduct, we should be really clear as our projects and our passions that we dedicate to user groups and our time are becoming increasingly more diverse. It's what we want in technology. It's important that everyone feels welcome, regardless of how different they might feel or how little they might feel that they can contribute. So I think that's really important because there's a lot of stories that I'm sure people went back to code of conduct stuff going along. And it's detrimental to what you're doing.
Excellent. Another reiteration of kind of the importance of having a code of conduct for your group. Yeah.
Going back to the subject of venues, I'm with a professional society. We used to be just LA County, and we had an equally inconvenient for everybody meeting place venue. But what you said about sometimes you wind up absorbing other groups, we've wound up absorbing the group down in Orange County. We've wound up absorbing a group that was out in the Mojave Desert area. So we've expanded our area, and we've been trying, and we're not quite sure yet about how successful it is, but we've chosen a number of venues in the different areas where we're hoping to get good turnout. We've been doing this for a year, for 10 years before we had, as I said, one inconvenient place for everybody.
Excellent. Sort of absorbing other groups and one location that's bad for everyone versus a variety of locations that are more convenient for people. You can kind of get more members. Yeah.
So for location and for food, recruiting agencies are an amazing resource. Always very happy to either host or bring food in for various types of sorts of time.
Yeah, I'll plus one on that.
That's a great point. So not just internal recruiting teams at a company, but recruiting organizations. Yeah, agencies will actually come and sponsor, which can actually be really positive. I know, there's always a lot of people who are looking for jobs who go to meetups. Yeah.
For those groups that actually have a treasury or bank balance of some sort, checking account, you might try corporate sponsorships.
Corporate sponsorships.
Yeah, just a certain amount of money and links on your website or whatever.
That's a really good point. One concern I know for some groups is Meetup.com is where a lot of groups post their stuff. Meetup.com is way too expensive. It's just really horrifically expensive. They just raised their fees, which is ridiculous to me, but that's fine. They do what they do. So it actually gets more expensive if you run more groups. And I've tried getting organizer accounts. I pay more for everything on one account. So I have 5 Meetup accounts. It's weird. But one nice thing about Meetup fees is as long as they don't raise them again in a while, which they won't. They haven't raised them in a decade until now. You can have a set sponsorship amount that says, hey, in order to run our group, host our group on Meetup, we need X amount of money a year. And that is a very easy, small, quantifiable sponsorship to ask for that's worth putting out there as a sponsorship option. Yeah.
I was just going to add to that. We did something with the LA Local Group where some of the groups put on conferences, so then those become very expensive. So one of the routes that we took was actually creating a nonprofit
Ooh.
for that. And you get into things like, you want the balance to be always under $10,000 because, or you have to use up the money at the end of the year so you don't get that ding and all this stuff. So it's just something to think about if you're thinking about having larger budgets for bigger events.
If you're thinking about a larger budget for bigger events, think about nonprofit. Also remember that is fraught with dangers. Do a lot of reading about it. Be very careful. You're suddenly handling a bigger bank account, and there's a lot happening there. Other hands that I haven't seen yet. Yeah.
So I put up a small house on a small house in the Chicago area. One thing we did was we were associated with the university. So obviously had to spend time with the students. We got make huge discounts on measures. We also had a decent relationship with the Department of Computer Science. So a lot of funding was routed through their department.
Fascinating. Having a group aligned with the university, having 50% students, and having maybe sponsors will give that money sometimes to the university, and the university will funnel that money through to the group. There's a lot of benefit of having user groups that have a lot of students that are aligned with the university. It can be really positive. Yeah.
For food, I haven't tried this particular meetup, but we've had a few events. Food trucks would be a good option.
Ooh, bring food trucks out. I like that. But I wonder if there's a way to, if you have a large enough meetup, if you can say, hey, if you come, we'll buy a bunch of food from you, but people pay their own food. It's kind of that zone. You had one?
So as far as the university, keep in mind too that most of your volunteers are going to disappear in 4 years.
Yep.
So keep in mind long-term goals. And then as far as food, if you're hosting at a venue that provides food, keep in mind your audience and their potential budget. Not everybody can afford, going out to a fancy restaurant to meet up.
That's very true. Yeah, if you're meeting in a food establishment, think about budget. Don't hold it somewhere too expensive so more people can come. And if you're doing stuff with the university, remember that a lot of your volunteers will vanish in 4 years, which really comes back to documenting what works, maybe having an email account that people have shared passwords for and stuff like that, so that you don't lose those conversations, you don't lose those resources as time passes. Anyone this way that I haven't heard from yet that wants to? Yeah.
I just want to say real quick on top of the swag, I represent a publisher. Inform is our site, and we do book mailings, and we have discounts of 35 to 45% for members. So I'm going to put these in the back.
Cool.
If you want to take one and register your group.
Sounds good. Thank you. Other folks? Okay. Yeah.
This is kind of based on joint meetings. There are many cases where groups are with similar or at least compatible topics. And some people, there are many, prefer to go to one single day to 5 or 6 sessions.
What?
Of different topics. Instead of going one day to each group. I don't know if I made myself clear.
Like a bunch of different groups have meetings the same evening?
Yeah.
No. Maybe, for example, where I live, there are 5 groups with not necessarily the same topic, but many people may be interested in many of those topics.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't want to go Monday to one, Thursday to another one, Wednesday to another one, Friday. So every now and then we all join a single meeting for 4 or 5 hours with all the conference, the presentations, and that gets another kind of audience.
Whoa, that's really interesting. So maybe if there's say 5 different local groups on a variety of topics coming together for one evening, having a 5-hour meeting, and having a talk from each group, people can come and they can stay for as much as they want, but they can stay for all those talks instead of having to go to 5 different meetings with 5 different groups throughout that week. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we've both done that at our feminist makerspaces, and people.
Awesome. That's great.
The another thing, which is, well, if you can't find speakers, there's all sorts of really excellent talks like this one that are being recorded and shared on the web for everyone to watch at their comfort. So some events that I've run are just pick a good selection of talks, make popcorn, and get the sort of conference experience without having to travel to the conference.
I love it. So the suggestion is, you can take recordings of talks and sort of select a few that you think the group are going to be interested in, get a bunch of popcorn, and sit down and kind of get that conference experience from the group, which is also probably a good follow-up if there's a conference that people don't get to go to but a lot want to hear about, bringing specifically talks from that conference to the group. I like that. Yeah.
On that note, also on the location thing, Google Hangouts on air is a good way. You can use that to stream. All you need is a cell phone, wireless connection, and a stand and a power supply, and you can stream your talk to YouTube live. So if you're geographically dispersed, other people can see the presentation. Also, with the shared desktop thing, your presenter can be in a remote city, depending on latency. We've had presenters in San Jose present meetups here and then have them immediately streamed.
Interesting. Remote speakers, sort of streaming, or you can stream the whole thing.
Archiving your presentation is really nice to have, too. If somebody else can do video or audio recordings, you may want them later.
Nice. Archiving that. And do we have one more? Yeah.
The thing I've seen recently work well, Amazon did this on the East Coast, is they had a big enough venue where they actually set up a couple tracks. There was a regular, 7 o'clock meetup time, and one was a beginner track, and then one was a beginner talk, and the other one was intermediate, and they were just in 2 different rooms, and you still had the same, central place for food and things along those lines, but you got to go to different rooms.
I like that. So several tracks, like having a beginner room and a more advanced room, but having people come back together before and afterwards for the social section so they actually get to meet each other. Thank you all so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing what you're doing. This, seriously, I learn a lot. I learn a lot from hearing from all of you. If anyone wants to talk about this more afterwards, if you have any questions, please come find me. Other than that, enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. Great free zone.
Thanks.